Namo Phat. Thanks so much for joining me for our daily practice check-in. Listen, listen, listen. This wonderful sound calls us back to our true home. The second mindfulness training. Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression, I vow to cultivate loving kindness and learn ways to work for the well-being of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I will practice generosity by sharing my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in real need. I am determined not to steal and not to possess anything that should belong to others. I will respect the property of others, but I will prevent others from profiting from human suffering or the suffering of other species on earth. For our Dharma lessons, we've been reading Abundant, Exalted, Immeasurable by Ajahn Pasanno. We're continuing in Chapter 7, the Karaniya Metta Sutta. Over these days, I'll introduce a few different methodologies, options, and kinds of phraseology. What rings true for you? What feels meaningful? Today we'll address the Buddha's words on loving kindness, which is one of the chants that we do. It's probably the most famous expression of loving kindness that the Buddha taught. The formula of directing loving kindness towards yourself, parents, teachers, and friends is probably the most common structure. However, this particular chant is the most well-known teaching on loving kindness in the suttas. I've heard a couple of different Pali scholars who are fluent in Pali, Bhikkhu Bodhi and Bhante Gunaratana, who say that this is the most beautiful discourse in terms of the scriptural Pali language. There's not a spare word anywhere. It's all perfect. Of course, in trying to get these things into English, you try your best, and there are many different translations. The beauty of the internet is that you can find a half dozen different translations of the Karaniya Metta Sutta. One of the striking things, given that this is the Buddha's best-known discourse on loving kindness, is that it is about a third of the way into the sutta before the Buddha even mentions loving kindness. I think this is great in the sense that loving kindness is to be cultivated, but that there is also that which should be done to get to that point. We need to be skilled in goodness and know the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech. This is not just a mental phenomenon. We can't just grab a feeling of loving kindness out of the ether of our mental states and hold on to it. No, it arises out of our actions and speech. This is the ground that we need to be attending to. The sense of our actions being able and upright, our speech being straightforward and direct. When we chant the recollection of the Sangha, the same word occurs, uju, direct, straight, upright, practicing directly. Be straightforward in speech, direct, but also gentle. There's a vivid idiom in the scriptural language, attacking each other with verbal daggers. Here's another one, someone born with an axe in their mouth. Speech can be just as harsh, cutting, and devastating as action. So it's important to be gentle as well as straightforward in speech. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be at peace. Namo Phat. Thanks so much for joining me today.